This is Krull the Death Stalker, and you're listening to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling!
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
This is Steve Bowtie Bryant here. Back in the 90s, I was a pro wrestling photographer for the South, and I released what might have been one of the original sets of indie trading cards. I ran across some of these original sets. They were up in Randall Fanning's attic all this time. PG-13 rookie card, Ricky Morton, George Weingroff as the Sheik, Chris Champion, Reno Riggins, Billy Montana, Gary Valiant, the Scorpion, the Medic, Rick Reynolds, Jeff Daniels, Mephisto and Dante, Ben Jordan, Steve Neely, Marcus Woodrow, Clinton Charisma, Little Farmer John. If you'd like an opportunity to get these cards, contact me now. You can get them for only $49.99. Contact me at Steve Bowtie Bryant at iCloud.com. Get your set now while supplies last.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome one more time to the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jimmy Street, and I'm here with my co-host and my brother from the same father and mother, Jarrett, the Plastic Sheik Street. What's up, brother?
Not much, brother. Just having a good day and looking forward to this interview, man. Yeah,
it's going to be a lot of fun. Krull, man, he's a good dude. He's always done right by me. You know, he took over the company at the loss of TJ Weatherby, which was heavy on everybody because, you know, TJ ran such a great promotion that everybody could always count on for a good booking and a good payday. And Krull took that over, and he already had the production elements. I mean, we'll talk about all this because I've got all these questions lined up, but I'm just excited to get him on because Krull's one of those guys that he knows where the bodies are buried. If you know what I'm saying.
If you know, you know, right?
Yeah, if you know, you know. He knows seriously, he's been involved with some of the all-time greats and some of the greatest people that I absolutely look up to, as do I look up to him. So, you know, Krull is definitely somebody that we have to have on our show. That was somebody that was on my very long list, but he was near the top because he's just been so important to me. So I'm excited for you to get to meet him, and I'm excited for the world to get to meet him, you know, and so
I love what we're doing right now, man. These guys that have been carpenters of the business, and they're getting hopefully their time to shine through some new eyes, and you know, people can look them up on YouTube and stuff like that and find matches and see that these people are, just because maybe you ain't seen them on AEW or WWE this year, don't mean that there's not important people in the wrestling business. You know, I mean, there's a lot more that have done things for the wrestling business that just don't get their kudos.
Absolutely. And, you know, if we do that's amazing. I mean, honestly, if we are just that, honestly. So you brought that up at a good time, and this is kind of a good point I want to make. So we had Shane on, right? You know, it kind of really started with Jeff Daniels, but when we had Shane on, it really opened the door for a lot of people. And, you know, Shane, he's our liaison to all these guys now. And so when we had Shane on, great response. He's still number one by a mile, not by a country mile, but a good mile. And then, of course, you know, we had Hot Rod on, and, you know, having those two guys on in a row almost, you know, it really kind of banged it. And then, of course, the Right Way reunion, which Shane is kind of the head of, he runs that. And basically it was like Hot Rod was on, the reunion happened, and then after the reunion happened, you know, it was like Shane sent me 100, you know, people to, not really 100, but Shane sent me a good 15 guys that want to be on the show. And then, you know, so it kind of left you and I with the decision to make. You know, we didn't really set out to be an interview show, right?
Not solely. I mean, we wanted to mix in interviews with some topics, I mean, we've been blessed with these interviews. So how can you turn them down? I mean,
right. That's the way we looked at it. And I wanted to involve you in that because I know you care about the topics as much as I do in our what if episodes. The what if we ever do a what if episode again should be our next one. But other than that, there's so many opportunities right now that I kind of want to strike while the iron is hot. I'm glad you feel the same way. Got some great names coming up. Of course, this one with Krull. Then we're going to have Quentin Charisma, who has another guy that knows where the bodies are buried. And then Rick Reynolds, man, he was Forsaken. He was one of the guys who trained Wolfie D. This guy is one of the guys. He's one of those wrestlers kind of guy. And Rick, honestly, is the nicest guy in the world, too. So excited to have him on. Then after that, the list is long. Our buddy Doug Markham, great referee, came in around the same time that I did and has just really done a whole lot in the business. He worked for MLW and, really, we're going to do more stuff with other guys. There's a bunch of names. Too many to mention right now, but, there's just a lot of opportunities right now. Yes, we will get back to topics. If you don't like interviews, I'm sorry, but, we're kind of going to double down on this right now since the response has been so great. So, speaking of that, why don't we go ahead and get to our interview with Tim Thomason, a.k.a. Krull.
Let's get to it, man.
All right, we'll be right back after these messages.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis, we're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
That's right, it's the talk of Middle Tennessee, the channel you love to hate and the channel you hate to love. It's Brian Turner from Brian Turner's VHS Rehab. And if you're looking for matches from Wolfie D to Jerry Lawler to Dusty Rhodes and the team that put a pimp before your eyes and a goatee between your thighs, Booty Call and Athena, go to lostwrestling.com. See, I made it easy for you. Brian Turner's VHS Rehab. Booyah.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome one more time to the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. And today we've got a very special guest on the show with us. Not only is he a professional wrestler, he is also a promoter. He is also a booker. He is also a technological wizard. Today we're going to welcome Krull to the show. How you doing, Krull?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good.
Yeah. Well, Krull, we always start off with the first question of the show. Goes to my brother from the same father and mother, Jarrett, the Plastic Sheik. Sheik hit him up with this question.
All right, Krull, man. This is a question that I think helps the audience get to know you a little bit and lets them see maybe what your influences in wrestling were. If you could name like 4 or 5 wrestlers that you consider like your Mount Rushmore of wrestling, who would those be?
Well, locally, I would say Tony Falk, Tracy Smothers, Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee.
That's awesome.
But growing up, Hulk Hogan, of course, Ricky Steamboat, Ric Flair, Terry Funk.
Yeah.
I don't think any of those names on either list can be argued with.
No.
I love those guys. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's a great 2 lists there, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're going to start off from the start here, Krull. Talk about your younger days, brother. Where were you born?
I was born and raised and grew up in East Nashville, right off of East Trinity Lane. You know where Porter used to run?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I lived walking distance to that building.
That is wild. That was my first venue I ever worked at in Nashville, so that's awesome.
Up until 2015 or 2017.
Yeah, okay. And then where'd you go to high school?
Maplewood.
All right. In the hood, Maplewood. I love it. So what I always liked about East Nashville is when I first moved there with my band, we lived in East Nashville. It was like 7 guys and 2 girls in a house. And it was literally like the real world. And had we had any sense, we would have shot it like a reality show because I think that would have made much more money than the band ever did. But with that being said, there was always a statement that was very true. Hey, welcome to East Nashville. We'll steal your heart and your lawnmower. Yeah. So you were OG East Nashville. So you went to high school. What about sports in high school, man? Did you do anything like that?
Well, I wrestled my junior and senior year in high school, and then I would always do the summer football practices just to get in shape for the wrestling. But that was pretty much it.
Yeah, you're a big guy, right? What were you at in high school? What was your size?
I was probably about 6'4", probably about 290, 320, something like that.
Yeah, that's when they get up to men. I remember Jared wrestled heavyweight in high school, and he was always talking about, he was like, when you wrestle those guys, it's you're wrestling men. Even though they're in high school, you're wrestling men, so.
Yeah, I mean, there was a guy in a few towns over. I never had to wrestle him, thank God, but he was ranked number 1 in the nation at heavyweight. So
pretty crazy stuff. So yeah, so obviously that was it. But when did you start liking wrestling?
Probably about the time I was old enough to understand what was on TV. Yeah. But in my household, nobody liked it. Just me. Probably from about the time I was 8, 9 years old. But I didn't get to go to my first wrestling match until my oldest sister's future husband, when they were dating, he took pity on me and took me to the fairgrounds. It would have been 86, so I would have been maybe 15.
Yeah.
At the time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely like our raising too. Our immediate household did not enjoy professional wrestling like we did, but we relied on our uncles and cousins to help us go see pro wrestling like Rock and Roll Express and Boogie Woogie Man. And, there was some kind of outlaw promotion running in Virginia that booked, as they were also working for Crockett, they would also book in Virginia. And I've never found out who ran that show, but long story short, we feel your pain on that one, brother. So, So talk about your start in wrestling. What was your first foot in the door as far as getting into professional wrestling?
Well, I mean, the Jarrett school that they ran off the Memphis TV, it was ran out of a local gym off of Conference Drive in a little strip mall called Fitness Trainers. They had the lowest, shittiest ring set up in the corner, and basically they would make you get like a $25 a month gym membership at the gym, and they had about 40 people at the start of it coming from all around the territory, from Louisville, Memphis, or people driving up on a Sunday for a 2-hour class.
Yeah.
Because, but basically the USWA school was just an extra line of income for Jeff Jarrett, because, the territory was on its ass.
Right.
So, Jeff was a good teacher, but you could just tell that his heart wasn't in it. It was just, it was just him going through the motions most of the time. The real trainers there were Tom Pritchard and Tony Falk. That's how I got in with Tony, and nobody would, Tony's not going to take a lot of bumps, so I kind of became the dummy, doing all the drills and stuff. So, I definitely got my little money's worth. But that was in April of '92 when I started out there.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah.
And I had my first match in Spring Hill, Tennessee against Kevin the Thug Jones in March of '93.
Okay, March of '93. And what promotion was that for?
Terry Rice's Power Slam Pro Wrestling.
Oh, okay. Now, so I've heard names like Norrie Havoc, Leon Downs. These guys also started around that same time with you?
Yeah. Eron was, you talk about somebody that was locked in with the Jarretts for whatever reason. Christine Jarrett loved Eron, and he was like doing security at the fairgrounds and stuff, before he was even really training regularly. But Eron's deal with Jerry Jarrett was that Jeff's younger brother, Jason, he wanted somebody to help coach him for when he was in high school, for amateur wrestling. And he, so Eron didn't have to pay for the school, and they really loved Eron, because hell, he was probably the first one out of that group of people that was working. And Eron was actually the one that went to Jeff and Jerry and said, look, Leon and Timmy, Big Krull, they're ready, so start using them. So, because we were like working little independents around here, then they, after a month or two of that, they started booking us, So Eron was the one that kind of went to bat to got us, like, hey, these guys are ready. Go, start using them. So
Eron's a great dude. He's one of the better guys I got to know. And I met a lot of great guys, but Eron was always awesome to me, and always appreciated him. Now, okay, Kevin the Thug Jones, man, I have seen some videos about him and laying on some promos, especially for the MWF promotion and stuff like that. Talk a little bit about Thug Kevin.
I mean, I don't have anything bad to say about Kevin, but to me, he's your typical Tennessee indie wrestler, lazy, not ever, he's the same as he was the match he had with me in 93 as he is today. He's the same lazy worker, doesn't want to do much, just wants to go out there and do the walk and the talk and and if that's what he likes doing and can get booked to do it, then more power to him. But, me, if it's, if you go to like playing in your band, you talked about, if you're playing the same song or set of songs every night, eventually you want to get better and evolve and learn, play something else,
Yeah,
at least that's how I am, creatively,
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Yeah, that's a requirement, because then you'll start to lose your crowd if you're playing the same songs, just like the same matches.
But Kevin always had heat with me, because when me and Tony were running, for about 2.5 years, we were running Madison every Friday on Harris Street. Yeah. And he would come over there wanting to get booked, and we'd book him, then he'd be outside in the parking lot. And the business that was adjacent to the property we were on, one was like a dentist's office, the other one was like a little hall that they had like meetings for union workers or pipe workers or something. So we had to keep all these properties clean. Otherwise, they wouldn't let us have people parking there, because the parking was real limited. And he would be out there, playing with his gimmicks, smoking dope or whatever, how the boys do, and leaving, condoms and beer bottles and shit. So he was always on my shit list for that.
I love it. We're starting hot. This is awesome.
The dumb tax shit, just the,
Yeah. Absolutely. That's a high tax too, man. So.
Yeah. The stupid tax we paying dealing with wrestling.
So tell us a little bit about the origin of the Krull gimmick.
Well, I'm sure y'all have seen it. In '83, there was a sci-fi movie called Krull.
Oh yeah,
I just always liked that name, and the house I grew up in East Nashville, our neighbors, in the early '90s when I started doing my training, was a guy that was doing a country music gimmick. He moved here from like Nebraska to release a children's records. His gimmick, he was like a singing cowboy doing children's songs, but he was a mastered leather designer. So I just drew up what I wanted as far as my Krull unit gimmick, because originally I had like a Wolverine mask with my other mask that I had. Yeah. And it just got lost over time, but he made me all that stuff out of just sketches that I sketched up for him.
Yeah. It was a very original gimmick,
Yeah. But I mean, that's pretty much where it come from, but, I kind of feel like I was the Mankind mask before the Mankind, because my fourth match was in Memphis, Tennessee against Jeff Gaylord. And that was the night they had Luger and Yokozuna kind of like in the warm-up before SummerSlam.
Yeah.
And the main event was Paul Neighbors against Jerry Lawler with Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson in Paul Neighbors' corner.
Right.
And they not saying that they stole my idea or my gimmick, but, that was probably, a year, maybe probably 2 years before the Mankind gimmick started. But they took a hard stare at me, just put it that way.
Let's just say that, right? Because I mean, because you were Mankind before Mankind, you were Abyss before Abyss. I mean, you were that gimmick was, and I'm not comparing the two, you know what I'm saying? But in the same sense, there is some, I'm not saying anything, but what are the ties with?
Yeah, but other than Vader, nobody wore a mask like that back then.
Right, exactly. And you weren't doing a Vader gimmick. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
So, and fantasy and sword and sorcery, all that stuff is super over with me. We grew up big, barbarians and Conan.
But originally, I called myself Krull the Deathstalker. I just thought that had a good ring to it.
It's a great name, man. Who would you say you took? I mean, not to say that you took anything from their gimmick. What I'm saying is like, who would you say you modeled your style after, or were you just trying to be yourself and see how it goes?
Just probably from everything, you know. I mean, every wrestler pretty much takes something from somebody, you know.
Sure, of course.
But I mean, I never thought I was like, you know. I guess explaining how I felt about wrestling, to me, it was doing something. Not, I mean, I don't think I would have ever been one of these guys happy being on the road 300 days a year, you know, night in, night out and stuff. You know, I like being close to home and all that. So for me, I just like going in there, like in the school, in Iran, we were always doing bumps and stuff, you know, trying to, you know, do moonsaults and stuff. And, you know, Jeff would be on us, y'all don't need to be doing that, you know, that kind of stuff. But, you know, me, I just always like the creative end of it, where learning how to do something, you know, evolving. But I mean, as far as just, like when I first started wrestling, I was, you know, getting heat by like taking big high back drops, throwing drop kicks, doing stuff that cruiserweights do. You know, me, I just like work it, you know, I just wanted to, you know, so I was always kind of my first year or two learning the ropes. I was told by bookers, you don't need to be doing that.
Right.
You need to be doing that, you know.
Yeah. Now, talk about, you know, and I don't want to jump ahead here too much, but it's around this time. I mean, talk about the influence that Tony Falk had on you, man. Because I love Tony. We all love Tony. If you don't love Tony, I don't like
about
you.
90, you know? Probably from about 92 up till about probably 2006 or 7. Hell, we were thick as thieves.
Yeah.
I mean, before USWO, we were running Paducah, Kentucky with his brother and Dennis Mason. And me and Tony would always Monday nights be at Kinko's Copy making posters after they ran like every other Sunday. So Monday night we'd be at Kinko's Copy cutting and pasting the poster together, making the copies of it, and then overnighting them to his brother. And it was kind of funny because Tony would always have a different pose he would got from Steve Bryan on like one of the Friday or Saturday shows in Nashville.
Yeah.
And then he would take it out there and have the guy make him an 8x10, and on his wall he'd have like 20, you know, one whole wall in his bedroom was just pictures of him. So it was kind of like the gimmick. Like we'd go do the posters, and he would make sure he get an 8x10 of a new picture of.
God, I love Tony so much. He's just so, you know, we fought like the devil to get him on the Wolfie D podcast.
That's the shoot, Pally.
Because I tell you,
the thing, Tony is, I don't know, it's like he, you know, just that old school mentality, like he doesn't want to tell or, you know, but I mean, hell, everything's, you know, kayfabe, hell, 30 years ago was going, you know, shit.
Sure.
But the cool thing about Tony back then, too, is, like, you know, I think I was 17, and about 6 months into my training, I turned 18. So my first match, I was almost so I would have been 18 or 19 when I started working. And when Tony would call my house, because I lived with my parents still at the time. So when Tony would call my house, you know, because nobody had cell phones back then. So
Tony, of course.
Tony would call my house, and my mom or whoever answered the phone, he'd leave a message for me, and it'd be his number, but he would say he was Steve Bryant, who was the photographer around here at the time.
Bowtie, yeah.
So there was still kayfabe back then.
Yeah. Just something about Tony, because Tony to me was like a magnet. Yeah, I know, and we're going to get into this later on working for you at SAW, but I tell you, Tony was just like a magnet to me, and I could not ever not talk to him. And it was like every time I talked to him, I took something from him. And, you know, Tony's style, and for the listeners, if you haven't heard Tony, I don't know why you're listening to our podcast, because Tony is such a precursor to even me doing something or any of us doing something. But Tony has that style about him, and it's well known that he talks in promo. You know what I mean? And, you know, LT, Yeah, LT has it as well. He does, and I love them both. Got nothing but respect for both the men, but it's just a promo, and it's great, but it's also kind of like, yeah, you know, and I'm not going to do my impersonation, but now I have heard that someone says that you have a pretty good Tony Falk impersonation.
Shit, I ain't done that in so long. Let's see. This is Tony Falk, and you are watching Jimmy Street on Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, because Krull wants to pay these ribs and aggravate me. He wants to call and talk to my daughter and say, Daddy, it's Tommy Rich. And I yell at her and say, it's not Tommy Rich. It's that damn Krull trying to be funny. And that's a shoot, Pally.
That's a shoot, Pally.
No, but Tony's great. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
So Tony to me is just one of those OG original guys, and he knows a little bit of everybody. And then once
Tony calls me Krull, right?
Yeah.
So he'd be like, Krull, my damn son. You know, so I could tell you, I could Tony all night.
That's
oh god, yeah.
I love it. Yeah, better kayfabe that. Yeah. So anyway, Tony's just one of those guys, and then once, of course, I found out he knew Gary Hart, it was over from there. So I was bugging him left and right. But anyway, Jarrett, go ahead, brother. You got a question?
Tell us a little bit about Extreme Clown Posse.
Extreme Clown Posse started up when we were running Paducah back in the day. Pretty much before Bert and Porter came to town.
Right.
And pretty much made it like where you work here, you can't work there. Pretty much you could work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Right.
Within like an hour or two of Nashville. And pretty much everybody got along, and, you know, it wasn't none of that.
Yeah.
So every other Sunday we ran Paducah, started in 93, and I think Tony ran that until like about 2002. But anyway, up there, it was, I don't know if y'all know Gator. I know Jimmy does, but Gator McAllister had a trainee that was doing a Roy Presley gimmick, like the Honky Tonk King Roy Presley.
Okay.
And so Billy had originally came in as a heel, then he turned babyface and came back in as my mystery partner against Gator. And that's when all the boys were listening to ICP all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And so we just kind of, you know, Extreme Clown Posse. So that's where it started. And so we just, you know, became two juggalos and just, you know, kind of fell in love with what they were doing and just kind of emulated, you know.
Yeah.
Two big fat guys doing a clown gimmick.
Yeah.
Gypsy Joe would go, Hot Rod, they're two fat clowns. They're supposed to make you laugh and happy. They big. And they beat people up. I don't get it. But yeah, we did that from probably about late 96, 97 to probably about 2003. Billy, he never really worked a lot. He just got in it when he broke in with Rod did, and we all just kind of became friends because Billy lived in East Nashville at the time too, and you know he pretty much worked when he wanted to, but you know he was just kind of, you know, limited when he wanted to work because he was always running Club Platinum strip club, and like after the show, all the boys would be down there partying and hanging out.
Yeah.
But yeah, Billy, he's a good dude though. It's just a lot of fun. And for me, I started in 92, so that was, you know, it was just kind of, you know, by that time, a lot of the shows that you wasn't really established in, you go to and people call you a Mankind wannabe and shit like that. So it's just kind of time for the first, you know, to kind of evolve a little bit for myself.
Yeah. Probably wanted to be like, no, they stole my gimmick.
Yeah. How do you clear that up though? You can't. That's the problem. You know, that's the problem. It's not like you can wear a shirt that says I did it first. I guess you can't. You know? I
guess that would kind of fall under the John Cena PG-13.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah.
You know?
The crazy one is Brian Christopher doing it, though. You know what I'm saying? Because he wrote and knew PG so well, and then he's doing that with the hip-hop drop. I've heard that conversation so many times, Krull. If we can just skip that one. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I'm sure you have. Yeah.
No, but of course, so obviously it's based on ICP, but you were a fan of ICP as well?
Oh, absolutely. I love ICP.
Yeah, yeah. Now, do you have a Hatchet Man tattoo?
No, I don't have any tattoo.
I didn't think so, but I've seen a lot of the boys have the Hatchet Man. So, yeah. So now there was something I heard about that you did something with Vern Troyer. Is that? Tell us a little bit.
I think this was in '99. There was a club in Nashville and Antioch over here called on Bell Road called the Palladium at the time.
Yeah. Okay.
And the MTV reality show, MTV Real World Road Rules Challenge 2000. They it was wrestling theme on this episode, and they booked a bunch of wrestlers just to kind of, really we didn't do anything on the show. They showed us on camera maybe 2 or 3 times, but we didn't do anything. But the gimmick referee was Vern Troyer, and we asked him to get you're stupid if you're in your gimmick and you want, gimmick pictures. And he was like real timid, for being around people. So he's in the bathroom and we're like, hey, can we get a picture? And he's like, so we kind of like just clouded, got around him and took the picture, But when that actually aired, a lot of juggalos, that kind of got us over with a lot of the juggalos because they seen us on that, and they're like, "Is this MTV making fun of ICP?" And we're like, "No, we're a legit deal,
Right.
And then Alternative Press, they did like a big story on ICP where they both had like 3 different covers, one with each one.
Yeah.
In that issue, they got like on a big, like 10-page article on them, but like on one of the pages, it's got like things related to ICP and it says ECP. And then it's got like a little paragraph that says 2 local wrestlers who go around emulating Insane Clown Posse as juggalo, So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is very cool. Now, obviously they do the gathering and things like that. Yeah. And did you ever hear anything about what those guys thought about it, or they even know about you? Did you ever hear anything about that?
Billy got to meet him at a in-store in like 2001. He showed them pictures and they were like, yeah, it's cool. And then up in Mincat Taylor and Wayne Hackney Jr. went to a little convention where they're selling records, like a little trade show, but
sure.
ICP used to go and set up gimmicks at some of these places, and ICP, Violent J's brother is Jump Steady, and he does a lot of stuff behind the scenes with them. So he was up there running this booth, and we went up there and I showed him pictures and got to talk to him. And, from what I understand, they were cool with it and never said anything negative about us doing it. So,
sure. Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, those guys are kind of, it's almost like Kiss, you never can tell if they're going to be like, is this cool or is this suable? You know what I mean? So
yeah, I think they're pretty laid back.
Sure. I think so too. Yeah.
Wasn't like we were trying to go around rap,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, did you ever think about doing that at all?
No.
Okay.
I ain't got no rhythm like that.
I understand. Okay.
So, like at this point in your career, you're looking at the late 90s, early 2000s. What would you say had been your favorite match or most memorable match that you had at this point?
Up till then, Jesus. Be honest, that's so damn far ago. Probably at Power Slam in '94, I did like a 3-a-week, maybe about a 3-week program with Moondog Spike, Bill Smithson.
Nice. Oh, yeah.
Okay. The first match we had, he really liked it and thought I, took care of him pretty good because, he's old school and he don't want to be tatered.
Right.
But then the second one we had, I tatered the shit out of him. So it was a good learning curve. But the matches were good. I mean, you got the shit beat out of you, but
sure.
He was the of all the Moondogs, he was the one that was work the gimmick and not like try to kill you.
Right.
And, and probably one of the better ones to deal with, as far as doing business.
Yeah. Hot Rod told some great stories about Larry Latham too, how he worked the gimmick and everything, and those guys are great, and they're honestly, I know they're so legendarily thought of in that area, but at the same time, the Moondogs are a all-time team for sure. Whether you go national or local. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But now that I'm sorry, it took me a second to think, but as far as like the Krull as a single wrestler, probably my favorite opponent and probably the guy I had the best matches with was a guy that Tony trained in 94, named Big John White. He was a big guy like me, and he was probably a little younger than me, but we had some pretty good matches.
Yeah.
But for two big guys that, in their early 20s. But Big John, he was probably a lot better than me, but together we had some real good matches. He was I would say he was more of a natural, like a Stone Cold for a big guy his size.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, very much.
But Tony actually trained him and another guy named Keith something, a kid out of Dixon. He actually trained him in the lawn of where Bass School is. That's where Terry Rice ran on Friday nights in the early 90s. But Tony trained him. Whatever happened with they're having the school, whatever, I think Terry had lost that building, but Tony would meet them over there and teach them how to wrestle in the grass to start out their training. And Tony stuck with them, and then they finally, eventually got somewhere to go. And but Tony stuck with them and got them trained and actually started using them,
Yeah, that's the important part.
So that's true to Tony's, credit. I'm trying to sound positive when it's what I'm saying, but
Right. Well, I mean, hey, it's the same element of wanting to start out however you can, and the fact that you can tie up with Tony Falk, it's always great, so that's a good start for sure. So talk a little bit about the around the time of the USWO, like talk a little bit about maybe some of how things were done or at least how the crowds were doing and things like that.
Well, the USWO originally started when, the Hackneys and Farron and Tony were running New South Championship Wrestling in 97 and early 98. And then the opposition, you know who I'm talking about, the building, got codes involved and got the building shut down. So Wayne pulled out. So then in late 98 and 99, TJ was running every Friday in that Excalibur gym, the original SAW. And then when that shut down, he lost that building. Nobody was really running other than, the occasional Burt at the fairgrounds and Porter stuff. So that's when Tony started running Springfield once a month at the center, and we would run once a month. Then we moved from there to the fairgrounds old Army building, and we ran every other Friday.
Yeah.
But when we started running that, we were renting Porter's ring, and he would have try to bring in a name. So we did one with Lawler, and we ran once a month. And as far as the houses, Tony could probably tell you the dollar amount, but I mean, the center, it holds a lot of people. We'd probably draw 250 maybe. And then that's why we moved to the fair building, because the rent's a lot cheaper and could run it more often. But Tony was also running like Tuesdays and Thursdays, just any day that he could get. So then that's when we moved to Fridays. So when we moved there, Farron was actually like a full partner with Tony on the financial end of it. So, Farron would cover his ass and make sure we got sponsors and everything. So then we were actually drawing probably over 300, I would say, at some, so around 300. But I mean, the crew was pretty much the same as what you probably know, Jimmy. We had Tim Ernesto, Jeff Daniels, Ben Jordan, Steve Neely, Patrick Miller, Kid Thriller, Hot Rod, Hammerjack, me, Billy.
Yeah.
Dante, just a who's who, Larry Valentine. I mean, I'm probably, and a lot of the guys that Tony would use in Paducah would come down carloads. And so how was the atmosphere of it? We had, we had started our TV in March of 2002. So Tony would book all these, kids like the Chuck Taylors and the Ricochets and all that group.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys. So we would Tony would want to book like 15 matches, but none of it meant anything because the people would go out there and just, fart on it.
Sure.
So, but he was trying to get more, in one night, which I understand why, but a lot of it just, come off hit or miss. And a lot of it just, I think that probably hurt the draw in the long run. But
yeah,
but our actual first episode of USWO Late Night was on a channel on Comcast. They had a infomercial channel pretty much. And locally, if you submitted a tape, they would, play it. But our time slot was Saturday nights at midnight.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And that spot cost us $18.73. A lot of people don't know that, and that was the cheap. But like if we were on Saturday mornings at like say noon, it would be like $700 or $800.
Right.
So that's what. But from like midnight to 6 in the morning, the time spots were under $20.
Wow, that's amazing. That makes a lot of sense, though, So,
but our very first episode, they did something wrong with our tape, and it aired that weekend like 100 and something times.
Oh my God!
It was airing. For some reason, it would air for like 2 or 3 hours straight, and then like a knife show where they're selling knives, it would come on.
Sure. Yeah.
And then like our show would come back on for 3 hours. So people was calling us all weekend. I told Tony, I said, damn, I wish it wasn't just a generic show. I wish we had like a big show to plug. At least we would get all that commercial time. But yeah, I think my Comcast rep said that show aired like 137 times between Saturday night and like Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That's amazing, man. So,
but our original run of USWO Late Night, we aired in that slot from March of 2002 to like around probably 09, maybe 08, something like that. So it was almost 6-year run.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Well, let me ask you this, because that brings up a great point that I wanted to ask you, but I think it's a perfect time to ask it. So with the Wolfie D podcast, I didn't know anything other than I just had, I have a wrestler. I can talk to him about his career, but where does it go from there and how do I do it? And I learned it. And if you hear the first shows of the Wolfie D podcast, it sounds like it's just a fan asking a wrestler questions. And then it turned into, we got some, a rapport about us and the production levels came up. I bought a good microphone. Sounds much better now. I'm much more proud of the product today that I can put out with both podcasts now than I did early. But I learned as I went. And, I've even had guys ask me like, hey, man, I want to start a podcast. How do you do it? And I'm like, man, this is my way. I don't want to tell anybody the wrong way, but this is how I did it. It's bass-ackwards, but I figured it out. Talk about that, your production quality, because you are a great producer as far as, TV shows go and things like that and commercials and all that. Talk about how learning how to do that and where did you learn that from?
It just always comes back to pretty much started out like what you just said with the podcast. Just, it was trial and error and just, that learning curve. But I always had that creative itch. Like when I was a kid, I was making wrestling belts out of cardboard, before I got before I got into doing TV with wrestlers. From probably the time I started wrestling to they started making replica belts in the late 90s, early 2000s. I probably made over 200 wrestling belts for all the groups around here in Alabama and Tennessee.
Wow. Yeah.
So it was always just that creative itch, of doing something. And I mean, it's, just, like seeing stuff on TV, like, man, I can do that. And I just, I was, at the time I started, I was pretty decent with Photoshop, so I could build my graphics in Photoshop and just, I got a computer, and that's when you could, buy a video card and import your analog footage. But the bad thing about that, you had problems with your audio being out of sync, so you have to it was just trial and error. I mean, I'd love to have a dollar for every hour I probably put in the stuff, So you figured,
Amen.
You figured I probably did 6 years straight of USWO, and then we did over 400 episodes of SAW in its original run. So, you know, I probably got over 1,000 episodes of just TV wrestling, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, it's just trial and error, you know? It's like, you know, just kind of, I knew in my head what I wanted to do, and I just kind of had to teach myself and figure out how to do it, you know?
Just kind of like how I did it, basically. You don't like the last show. You said this could be better. I'm going to fix this and then fix this. And,
you know, somebody, you know, buddy's got a camera here, but, you know, you get the money, you figure out what to buy, you go buy something better. You know, it's like, get a piece of the puzzle here.
Right.
You know, that's how me and Reno hooked up to do SAW. You know, in 07, TJ, you know, that's the thing I love about TJ Weatherby. You know, whether we were running wrestling or not, we were always going to eat, hanging out, and doing shit, going to auctions. You know, the same with Cersei. We were friends regardless of what we were doing. But TJ got the building in Millersville, and you know, me and Reno had the itch of wanting to do something better because the area was kind of dormant. You know, it's like, you know, I know how to do the TV. Reno's got the know-how to get the sponsors and help put it together. Boom, boom, boom. You know, TJ had the building. So you never saw Millersville before Reno and me went up there.
Right.
TJ started in February of 07, and then it's kind of like, you know, he was running Saturdays, didn't want to step on Tony's toes, but, you know, getting talent to commit and stuff, you know, so it was me that kind of talked to him in, like, TJ, you need to go to Fridays. That way you got better talent and more access to talent. And, you know, but he didn't want to. But like I tried to tell Tony, I was like, it just is what it is. Because when Tony was at the Stadium Inn, it was like he was held hostage by Bill DeShields. I don't know if you ever met Bill DeShields, but he was the creepy manager that ran the Stadium Inn, that he told everybody he owned the place and he owned car dealerships. But he was just a creepy gay, old 60, 70 something year old man. And, so, you know, before Tony was down there, Bert was running it, and then he put Bert out, and Tony agreed to come in there because we had, at that time, had lost our building in Madison. So 6 months later, we wound up in Stadium Inn, and he brings Bert back. So you got wrestling on Wednesdays, us on Fridays, and Bert on Saturdays. And if anybody ever wanted to know why Tony ran multiple nights there, it was to keep everybody else from running.
Yeah.
But Bill, then, you know, Bill had to run his own. So then instead of just USWOs, USWO ATL, so it was just confusing to the consumer, you know. And Tony put up with a lot of bullshit down there.
Yeah.
You know, for years, TJ and me told Tony, said, get out of here. You can come up here and run. And, you know, so it took Tony a couple months to build up his motivation to come up there, but he come up there. And I love seeing this because, you know, to me, it's being around people and being around people that you love and that you want to be around with and doing something, especially when you're doing something creative and, you know, all that. But Tony walked up there, and outside the sawmill, Tony asked TJ two questions, and he says, first question Tony asked, he says, brother, am I welcomed up here? And TJ said, well, hell yeah. And he hugged him. He says, and second one said, can I pay you $150 and run your building once a month? He said, yeah. So you got to love him. He was, you know, and Tony's always had like I mean, I don't know if Tony's ever told you his past, but he had a lot of shit growing up and seen a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
So I think that's why he's like that, real timid and don't want to be confrontational and stuff like that. But I'm sure if you've been around Tony enough, if he's pushed into a corner, he'll snap, you know, and take it for himself. But Tony took a lot of shit from Bill DeShields. Like he would, because Bill always had a relationship with Porter, and he would like call Porter, and Porter's like, did you know Porter's got a business license? You're going to have a business license, Tony. Oh. You know, so Tony would go get a business, you know, so then it was like, well, you're going to have liability insurance. So Tony goes and gets liability insurance. Well, it ain't good enough, you know. It's just always
one extra
you know,
thing.
I wish Tony would have, you know, but it's just, you know, is what it is.
Well, and the hipsters kind of started flocking to the stadium in East Nashville,
Well, Josephus kind of filled the void when I kind of left and was doing SAW with Reno. Yeah. Josephus kind of, stepped in there and they trained him because he was like the Shelby Street Brawl. Josephus was the one that hooked LT and them up with that world and got all those people coming. So, like I tried to tell Tony, TJ's might be running the same night, but it's further enough apart that, you want to draw your people. So it's like, when one door closes, another one's open. It's kind of saying, so when I kind of stepped away from the stadium in and was doing SAW, Josephus come in and there was other people that came around and Tony actually probably did a lot better, because when Josephus first started bringing them people, I'm talking about before Joe was even wrestling. Right. They would bring tons of people down there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
So it's kind of like the Monday Night Wars. Not that they were at war, but, TJ drew good consistently and Tony drew good consistently.
Right.
And then just like anything else, it's hard to do that stuff every week and stay consistent. Like when we would draw a big house in Millersville, the next week or two, it might be the shits. And then it's kind of like you build back up and you have your big show and then kind of start over. But
yeah. That's the natural progression of a promotion too,
Hey everyone, this is Shane from Insane Shane's World. I release wrestling figures of enhancement talent, mid-card wrestlers, and wrestlers that you never thought would have a figure available. So if you're interested in adding a really cool and rare figure to your collection, then don't hesitate to contact me at shamtheman73@gmail.com. That's SHAMtheman73@gmail.com. You can also join my Facebook group. Just search Insane Shane's World.
If you're a fan of rock music, I'd really appreciate it if you took a moment to check out my podcast. It's called the Decibel Geek Podcast. We've been doing it for about 10 years now. We talk about Kiss. We talk about Ozzy. We talk about Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses and Metallica. We talk about all the legends from the 60s and on, up to brand new bands that you should be hearing about today that you're not going to hear on the radio. It's Decibel Geek. Wherever you find your podcasts, you'll find us there. If you love rock and roll, I can almost guarantee you're going to love my show.
So I remember working for Porter. That was my first promotion. I worked in Nashville, and Aaron Camara got me that gig, and he booked me, and we would be in there, and we would be doing things. And then a lot of the guys like Drew Haskins, Nick Iggy, they would be saying, well, we're going to work tomorrow night at Tony's. And you'd be like, well, I want to go do that. How do I make that happen? And then you'd find out that Porter's like, you can't work for me if you're going to work for that old Tony Falk, And then you finally start to talk to people like, TJ Weatherby would come to those shows. And honestly, I feel like TJ was there because Kevin was there, and also to see if there was anybody worth a damn that he could take and bring to Millersville. And I got to liking TJ and talking to him. And, TJ's a great guy, and I would never say a bad word about the man at all. I don't know a bad thing about him, so it's not that I would say anything, but I love that family. I think the world of them. But TJ said, hey, if you ever want to come out to Millersville, please, talk to me. And that's how it ended up. Now, I don't want to get into all that yet because I want to kind of put that at the end. But anyway, long story short, I understood the element of not being able to work for another promotion because you're held hostage by only really just a booking. It wasn't even a paying booking. You know what I'm saying? So at first I realized, hey, hang on, I'm getting to do this in front of people, and that starts to wear off. Because you're like, well, I'm actually doing something and I'm getting heat, and I'm not ever going to say I was ever the best at anything, but I will say I was getting some heat, and I didn't want to, I felt like I was contributing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And at that point, when I'm contributing to something and he's not even giving us a hot dog, that's the other thing is like he was, I could get into all that. I don't really want to get into that on the air, but long story short, Porter essentially would hold you hostage with other bookings. Like, well, I'll get you in Kentucky. You can manage Dutch Mantell against Lawler if you want to, but you can't go work.
He did that to Tony too. He did that to me and Tony when we were renting his ring when USWO first started.
Yeah.
Farron was his partner when we moved to that second building. We're running Fridays, and something stupid happened with Patrick Miller, and Kid Thriller said something because of something like you're talking about you can't work here, you can't work there. So they said something on the mic that wasn't real. I mean, I don't know. Patrick Miller and Porter are both dead. So, I mean, it was something like that. They said something that offended Porter. So what does Porter do? Tony, they're either fired or you're losing the ring next show.
Right. Exactly.
So Porter would always use that, against somebody. But, that's what ran Farron off, because Farron's like, well, this is our show. You're working for us. We're renting the ring.
Right.
So, Tony not standing up for herself, Farron leaves, still got the ring with Porter.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. And to me, I would take 10 Tony Falks over 100 Mike Porters. And again, he's gone. I would never, but it's just.
And don't get me wrong. Porter, my problem with Porter was I was standing up for me and Tony.
Sure. Yeah. And my problem was me standing up for myself, so, and again, he did a lot of things for me and I'll always appreciate it. But at the same time, it was kind of a deal to where he would hold things over your head. But anyway, so we do a little thing on our show that we like to do that what it is it's like your first thoughts of this person. Whether you want to go into detail, it's fine. Or if you just want to say, great guy, whatever. We do a little thing called the name game. And, I had one planned for Hot Rod, but I tell you that Hot Rod, he don't need anybody to help him talk.
Long-winded. Yeah, read his text messages.
I love Hot Rod to death, but he don't need anybody to help him talk. He is a one-man podcast himself. So, and he actually should start a podcast. That's a whole other story. But would you be willing to play the name game, Krull?
Sure.
All right. Well, let's hit that music, DJ, and we'll be right back. All right, we are back with the name game with Krull. And Krull, we're going to just name some names here, and you can go as much into detail as you like. If you don't, it's okay. We'll skip it. So the first one I've been told to start with is the Scorpion, Pete Cannon.
He was the booker for Terry Rice when I first started, and he was the guy that was on me a lot, saying, don't do backdrops, don't throw drop kicks. Big guys don't do that. But no, Pete, I don't think really cared for me at first, but later on, after I think he got used to me and all the water under the bridge, he booked me in an angle in Columbia as like his original partner from the 70s, son or grandson. So I was like the Super Scorpion #2.
Yeah,
and like come in to get revenge on him. So as soon as that happened, me and him got along fine.
Yeah,
but I mean. Yeah. When he would chop you, his hand was so big, he would hit you on your shoulder right there, and that hurt like hell.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
Like your shoulder blade, his hand was so big that he would chop you so hard that would actually hurt like somebody hit you with their fist.
Yeah, man.
But no, Pete was a big son of a gun, but he was a good dude.
Yeah, and actually stepfather of Wolfie D, if nobody knows that. Yep. So anyway, okay, the next guy we're going to say is Dale Storm.
Dale Storm. I actually had to do a job for him. And the thing with Terry Rice, he was running Dickerson Road, which is probably 3 miles from where Porter was running at the time. So here I am, green as goose, working out of a grocery store, selling tickets in advance, bringing 50 or more people.
Yeah.
And barely in the first match. And I had to, they're like the last week they lost the building. So last week there, I had to put a manager over because I was in the doghouse with Pete as a booker, which is fine. But like my point I tried to argue with him is like, how can I keep people coming when y'all want me to sell tickets in advance? But so basically the way those shows ran, I was the first match. My people would leave by the second or third match. Ben Jordan, Steve Neely were in the third match in a tag. Their people would leave because they drew pretty good back then.
Sure.
Their people would leave. So when Pete got to the main event in his match, it'd be, less than half a house there. So He got mad when I told him that. But as far as Dale was all right. Dale was pretty much a mark. I don't know the financial, but him and Pete were the ones that had Terry Rice propped up because, Terry Rice's angle. He canceled more shows than he's ever ran. But
right.
Yeah. But yeah, a quick, funny Dale story is that back in the 90s, everybody had the hotlines, the little voicemail boxes where you could put your card on. You'd have like a 2-minute message, and then they could leave a voicemail if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So you'd call, like TJ's was 664-2388, and you call the Southern. Well, Terry Rice was one that kind of originated that or had it first that I've seen. So Dale Storm and Terry Rice had a big falling out, and were running oppositions against each other for like 5 minutes before they all got canceled out. But Tony used to gas me up to call Terry's hotline and do Dale Storm because I could do his voice. I'd go, Terry Rice, I'm gonna get, that kind of shit.
Yeah.
And then Terry Rice, we would call Terry Rice because Terry Rice always worked like the graveyard shift at an Exxon or somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'm, just talking wrestling, and he's like, that motherfucker, so Tony had me gassing that up. I'm like, Tony, if somebody gets hurt in this, you know. But Tony used to be bad to gas me up to do ribs. So. But yeah, that was pretty funny, I thought.
That is funny. That's hilarious.
How about former guest of ours, Hammerjack? What can you say about him?
Mr. Two Left Feet. Hammerjack's a good dude, man. He's been around forever. I used to rib him because on his Facebook said he was born in ¡88, and I'm thinking, so when you wrestled for TJ in '99, you were 11 years old. No. The thing we always rib Hammerjack about is there's a guy running the fairgrounds after TNA moved to Florida, and he brought Sid in. They had a thing where Sid was working Lone Star, and everybody, was just a throwed out finish, and everybody was hitting the ring, and he was choke slamming. When he choke slammed Hammerjack, I was outside doing the handheld, and Hammerjack's other foot got about 2 inches off the ground. And he sandbagged the choke slam, and Sid, I was sitting there looking. It's like Sid made eye contact. It's like, motherfucker. But no, Kenny's one of my boys. I love him. He's great.
That's awesome.
How about the, we just talking about him just a second ago, recent guest, Hot Rod Biggs.
Oh, Rod, man, hell, he does my taxes. Shit, I wish he's in a better spot financially for himself, but he's been going through some shit the last few years with his health and with his personal shit. But anybody I could help, I've done a lot for him. He's done a lot for me. But shit, I thank the world of Hot Rod.
He's great. This is my bad impersonation of Hot Rod, but it's all in love, okay? I just remember hearing, Jimmy Street, what is he going to do tonight? He's got Sean Hoodrich. Are they going to get that victory? I'm just, love Hot Rod.
Probably one of the main reasons I love Rod is because as a booker trying to run a show dealing with egos and babies and all the bullshit and personal drama people bring to the show, Rod will show up and whatever you need, regardless of whether he agrees with it or disagrees with it or likes the guy or don't like you, he will do it.
And he will thump somebody for you too, man. He's a guy that will fight. If he's your buddy and he's your friend, he will fight for you till the end. And I know that rhymed, but what I mean by that is Hot Rod is a real one. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I tried and true.
Yeah. And that's absolutely admirable of him. Love him to death. Think the world of him and always will. I never knew because, I would never catch our show live, unfortunately, and I didn't have DVR at the time. So when you had him on YouTube now, I've been watching him and I was like, man, he was putting me over like $1 million. Like I never knew it, and I bring it up to him and he's like, oh man, I just doing it. That was my job. I didn't. And I'm like, I appreciate that though. You don't know how much that meant to me because I never knew it at the time. It was awesome to hear. So, okay, the next guy we got coming up is Devon Day. Tell us a little bit about him.
Man, Devon, man, it's sad he's no longer with us, man. There's like so many of them around here. But Devon was from up around Paducah. He was some of the ones that come in the carloads. But, I mean, what a talent, dude. There's a match on USWO and from 2002, him and Eron, man. And this is when Eron would go running spots and shit. And they did this one spot. It's just a simple, basic spot. But, man, it's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
Watching it. for like a minute and a half, or just hitting the ropes, drop down, leapfrog, I love that spot. But as far as D-Line, man, great dude, man, unlimited potential. Should have been, like so many on a higher, he could have, if he had his shit together, there's no limits to where he could have been.
Yeah. That's awesome.
How about Jeff Daniels, the Crippler?
The Crippler. Rather go to my mama's funeral my own. They don't call me the Crippler. But Jeff, I've never had a problem with Jeff. I mean, he's always, whether I was booking or he was booking, he'd always show up and do, he's a good all around dude,
Yeah.
When I think the best he ever was around here is when him and Timmy was together.
Oh yeah. Disturbing behavior. Love him.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, I'm going to bring that guy up too. The man who could scare anyone, and he's actually just a really chill guy, is Mr. Tim Ernesto. So,
oh man, if anybody around here doesn't love Tim Ernesto, I'll be damn. We're actually trying to find him for the show that we're doing coming up. Yeah, I mean, he just where he's been and what he knows and what he can do. Just
seriously,
I mean, we did a big USWO taping in March of 2005 at the Grand Slam with Shane and them, and we did a big angle at the end of it where Tony stayed babyface, but the rest of the USWO got into it with the CWA. It was actually pretty good shit.
Yeah,
and just to kind of return the favor and them to Shane for letting us come in down there doing the Sunday taping, and we actually packed the damn thing out, which surprised me. So, at the end of the night, I'm turning heel. Tony's still babyface, and the whole, it's like the locker, So, but Ernesto, for some reason, was mad at Anthony Wayne because he had said something smart about the SAW gimmick, because he made a comment about something about learning to work the gimmick.
Oh,
so the first time Ernesto had seen him was at this taping. So he was like, I'm going to get the motherfucker. I'm going to get the motherfucker. I was like, well, wait till after the show's done. Everybody's out of the building. Y'all got something to say. Take care of it then. So,
sure.
So when we're doing this big, like, beat down, it's kind of like a battle royal, but it was all the, it was like a big pull apart with 10 Columbia guys and all the USWO guys.
Yeah.
So it's like Shane had somebody had Anthony Wayne I think Shane had Ernesto down in the corner, like with his foot on his throat, like choking him, and then it's like somebody, like a battle royal, Shane pairs off with somebody else. So Anthony Wayne comes over to the corner and it's like somebody turned the damn light switch on. Ernesto was back up on his feet, just like boom. But man, as far as the best striking, punches, kicks, man, just like, Cahagas, man, his striking, his punching, everything's just on point, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He's a real one too. And I can, to me, he was just always kind of I never unfortunately got to know the man, but I also never felt like I wanted to bug the man. Does that make sense? No. You know what I mean? Exactly. I just kind of wanted to, I always shook his hand, gave him my respects, but he was always one of those real dudes and just, you could just tell the business. I'm going to
tell you a real good, I can't believe I almost forgot this, but here's how Timmy and his family is. And this is what got me over with Timmy and his brother. We had when we were running Madison, we had all the Porter's guys coming over trying to get booked. We had Burt's guys coming over trying to get booked. We had all the TNA flow over guys trying to just get work.
Sure.
So we had we had more guys than we ever needed,
Yeah.
And so Timmy's brother's getting bugged I don't even remember where it was. It was in Texas or Arkansas or somewhere, wherever Timmy's brother at the time, Tom Ernesto Jr., he kept bugging us to get these guys booked. There was two guys doing like a military gimmick, two little fat guys, and they had a manager. So Timmy told him, said, well, it's going to be next to no money because there's no damn money, because there's too many people to pay now. So these guys were coming through or something. So we booked them. They come in. One guy gave me his number because he wanted me to send him a copy of the tape.
Yeah.
So, and the building we ran was the guy that owned it at the time was running a construction company out of the front of it, his little office and shit. So he was trying to do like a flea market and have a store and stuff in it, but he was there on the next morning at his office, and after these guys worked, I guess they stayed in town, and they were mad because they didn't like the, Porter or Tony payoff they got. So they come up there the next morning and stole my banner and one of my cordless mics. Where on Sunday, we were always up there doing stuff for the TV, and Tony and them had their little training thing. So Tony and them are already there, so I go up there just to pick something up or drop something off. So I walk in, and on our back wall, our banner's gone. And I go, Tony, where's our banner? And Tony goes, I didn't even notice that. So I get to looking, and my microphone's gone.
Oh, man.
So the guy that we rented the building from, he said, those guys came in here yesterday all mad because y'all didn't pay them or something. And I said, really? So I called the guy up. I was like, hey, did y'all take my shit? And the guy immediately stooged on the other two. He goes, man, it wasn't us. I'm like, look, y'all knew what y'all were getting into. It wasn't like y'all come up here and got f***ed on a payoff. Right. Y'all know it was, you know, it was shit money. You took the booking, so you knew what you were getting before you got up here.
Yeah.
So when Ernesto found out, he called his brother. Tom went down there, whatever he did, he threatened to kill them or whatever he did. I don't know. This is in Texas or Arkansas, but the next Friday, Ernesto's brother drove up and brought my shit back to me. So that's why Ernesto is over with me.
Yeah, and I'm sure that was a quick handoff too. I'm guaranteeing that. You always, when Tom and Tom Sr. would come in, you could always feel a presence there, and it wasn't like a negative presence. I don't mean it like that. What I mean was like there's like that's wrestling. That's wrestling is flowing through these gentlemen. You know what I mean? So yeah. But
Brian, I gave Brian a bunch of. He comes up every now and then. I give him a bunch of stuff I find, but I gave him some little mini shoot, because when I first started playing around with doing TV and stuff, that's when Tim and Jeff were the NWA tag champs. So I got a lot of stuff with them. They're like shooting, taking shots at Bert and different little cute little shit. So he's got some of that he'll be putting up pretty soon.
Well, it's funny you brought him up because he's become a friend of mine. I didn't actually know Brian because he'd gotten out of the business by the time I got in. And, we've gotten to know each other because we're both now, in this content creation world that you've been in for so long. And talk about Booty Call, Brian Turner's VHS Rehab, Brian Hardison. Talk about those guys, Dan, everybody.
Dan and Brian, hell, I think they were working for Porter and them when they come around, But Brian and Dan, they were in that little clique with Kid Thriller and Slacker J, and they were all kind of mentored by Corey Williams. So they were all, they just, which Slacker was one of our, diehard guys at the time. So they just eventually, made it from Porter's end over to our end. We just started using them, and that's when they just kind of meshed with Athena in the mix and just kind of took off like a rocket for us,
Great team. Great. Yeah. Athena, I always heard this, and I'm not saying that I'm any good as a manager. We're not getting into that. I don't need to hear this. But what I'm saying is a lot of people would say, yeah, you're pretty good, but you're no Athena. Well, and I was like, I can't compare to her. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And in so many ways.
Exactly.
But the thing I like about Athena is that she was always outgoing. I don't know if you ever watched a lot of that USWO, but we always had Tony would get on the mic and talk about Genghis, the guy that did our commentary.
Yeah.
He was just another guy that hung around, became like the voice of our show at the time. And Tony was talking about with all these girls coming in from TNA, like Tracy Brooks, ODB, and the beautiful people, which I can't think of her name, but the one that was married to David Richards. It was 8 or 10 women. We would have women's matches every, but anyway, Tony got on the mic just making something out of nothing. Is going, we're going to have a win a date with Genghis contest. So then Athena just kind of took that, and we started doing all these vignettes. So we did this big, long, drawed out thing where Athena was trying to influence Tony to let her win, because she's got to be not that she wants a date with Genghis, just that she's the top recognized woman,
Right.
And so we wound up like doing a shoot voting, and TJ actually won the vote. because TJ would bring a shitload of his, clique, and they were always ribbing him. So when we did a shoot vote, and it was ODB, but the shoot vote from that night, it was TJ. But we wound up shooting a vignette at a little mom and pop meat and three place we had called Charlie Bob's. They were famous for a thumper hamburger, but it's no longer there.
Yeah.
So we went over and filmed this win a date with Genghis contest, and it's ODB, and so he's like trying to play it up like he still lives at home with his mom and like bragging about to ODB, and she's like, yeah, whatever, dude, So like she opens the door for him, and then like before that, Athena and Gordon come in like trying to sabotage it, so they pay off the waitress to let her be the waitress. So Athena's over there with a blonde wig, and Gordon's got like the little fake mustache with a wig on.
Yeah.
And just the way I edited it was pretty funny, like with the music and a little. But anyway, the date winds up where they dump food on Genghis and ruin the date and everything. But then the blow off between Genghis and the date and Athena is they have a food fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we talked the ring and bought about $100 worth of groceries, flour and the people got into that so good. The next angle Athena did with the valet named Lisa Faison, it worked right into that. So, she was real good with the creative and helping with the vignettes. And of course, she just on camera, she was awesome,
A natural. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely didn't get to meet her. I've, known so many people that speak so highly of her. It's just out of this world.
But all that stuff is on YouTube on my channel, if not Brian's channel,
Yeah. Definitely go follow those. Absolutely. We'll cover that in just a second, I promise.
How about Jeremiah Plunkett? What can you say about him?
Man, nothing bad at all. Damn, man, Plunkett. The only thing bad I can say about Plunkett is I wish he was a lot higher than where he is,
Oh, yeah.
But you couldn't ask for a better hand. He's a good dude, man. Not only is he a good dude, he's deserving of everything he's got and hadn't got, But
Absolutely.
if just like that angle we did with Plunkett and Kojima, if I'd have known that'd have been TJ's last time he'd have been at a wrestling show alive, But that was, you talk about a magical night. That was a magical night. Everything
Definitely.
just went off. We had hiccups with like the fire marshal and TJ bullshitting the fire marshal. He showed up like 3 times wanting a head count. A lot of people didn't know this, but TJ's, because I got the certificate from the city up there, his legal amount of people counting wrestlers, everybody total in the building was like 176. So we had over probably 250 people in that building that night, plus the wrestling. But TJ would like, after we done sold it out, he would like, people would come in, he'd sell them a ticket. He said, you got to walk around back and go in the back door because the fire marshal was there.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But no,
Dude,
Plunkett, man, Plunkett, man, I know he's grateful but for working for the NWA nowadays, but man, when I watch some of that stuff, they got more knuckleheads than they do good guys. And just him and Alex Taylor, man, they should be, in the top 10 guys that they utilize, in my opinion, but I'm not Billy Corgan, so,
right.
It's
right.
just,
yeah, I would love to see him get some kind of great push. I know they were talking about maybe taking him into the juniors and stuff. I keep up with Plunkett. I don't want to get into anything really negative here because I love Plunkett. And I was in a bad place. Let me just say that. I've addressed this and already hopefully fix this with Plunkett, but I was in a bad spot and I did some things wrong to Plunkett that I shouldn't have. I borrowed some money, and long story short, I wasn't in a good spot. But the time that I got to fix that, part of my journey of getting right, you have to fix your past transgressions. And when I was able to finally do that and fix that, I tell you, it really took a big thing off of my heart because I knew how good of a guy that dude is, and maybe what happened with he and I is not fixable at a total level, but I've done I feel like I've done a lot to try to fix that, to make it right. And in knowing that, I know that I don't know how deep I want to get into this, Krull. Let me think here. I'm sorry. I don't mean to take over your show. But
we got all day.
What I mean by that is, I wish that it never had happened. But when it came down to it with Plunky, he was like, man, it's cool. And long story short, when I cleared that up, I felt this massive relief, because I feel like, the higher power was like, hey, not only did you do something right that you needed to fix, you also cleaned up with a good dude. That's one of the good dudes, and I've always been a huge fan of Plunkett as far as him and, the Untouchables. When I was put with them, and I'll kind of lead into this, when I was put with them, I was not ready at that time, and they were so good. I felt like I just kind of screwed the pooch on that one, to say the least. And it was kind of, again, I was in a bad spot at that time, but when it came down to it, I was not ready for that. So I guess let me lead into this conversation here. So anybody that's heard my story knows that I was playing a character named Prince Omar Al-Kazan, and my mentor gave me that, and a lot of the guys really liked it because it gave some heat. Now, a lot of the guys were like kind of hit or miss on it, because I didn't necessarily look Middle Eastern. Let's just say that. Anybody that knows me, I'm from the mountains of Caucasus. Let's just say that. I'm very Caucasian. And I had guys like Burt Prentice, Dutch Mantell saying, man, why are you doing that gimmick? You don't, that doesn't make sense, So when I was doing that gimmick, TJ hired me to come out to SAW to do that gimmick. And he brought me and a guy named Dyron Flynn, and we were working there. And that's when I first met you. And we started talking and stuff like that. And I kind of got out of the business. And again, because I was not in a good place personally at that time, some of this stuff is a little fuzzy, but we leave Porter's, end up going to TJ's, working there solely, end up leaving, coming back. And then you and I kind of have a talk, and you're like, hey man, I don't really see you in the Omar gimmick, and I want to do more with you, but I don't really see you in the gimmick. And can we do the Jimmy Street? And kind of lead me into the thought process that you were having at that time.
Well, at the time, Reno and Paul's partnership with the TV was just kind of in the toilet, and I had to kind of been dormant for a few months and just sitting on the sidelines, and TJ had always wanted me back up there. So I told him, well, if I do, Reno's going to give me the TV. So, we were on a, pretty good channel at the time, CW58. And just,
yeah.
But look at it this way, Jimmy. What you see, how you see something is not how somebody else might see something. So a fresh pair of eyes on something might give you a better perspective. So, in 2022, with all this ideology of politically, you think you would be doing that gimmick without getting No. You see what I'm saying? So that was my mindset, is we couldn't put that on TV without offending somebody.
Sure.
It wasn't nothing against, now like in Columbia or some of these little towns like in Millersville, just on a non-televised event, you could have got by with that probably today. But,
Right.
But it wasn't nothing personal. That's what guys used to kill me when I was always a booker. It's like, well, I don't think Krull well, I don't have to like you, and it ain't about liking you. It's about bringing a group of people together to be something bigger than an individual. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. No, and I don't want you to think I'm coming at you like
that. No, I understand. I've been through that. I've been shit on as a worker, so I've been one of the boys. I don't feel like one of the boys anymore, but I've been on both sides of the team, so I understand.
No,
just like with not to get on a tirade about Dyron, but I don't have a problem with Dyron. How he feels. I'd like to sit down and just personally talk to him. Like, well, why do you feel this way?
Yeah.
Because when I came back up there in September of 2012, TJ's business was in the shitter.
It was.
And Marcus Pastorius was just using him to launch the Crossfire bullshit.
Right.
And not that it's bullshit, but to me, he's bullshit. But, that's a different story. But, at the time, when I come back up there, everybody had been the champion multiple times except Dyron Flynn. That's why I put the belt on Dyron. What do you think the first thing TJ said to me when I put the belt on Dyron? Why you put it on him?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, so I could get that reaction out of people. If you feel that way, the people out there are going to feel that way.
Right. So, let me say this real quick. So I leave there. You talk to me and you're like, hey, man, I don't see you in the gimmick. We're going to be doing TV. And it was understood. And I don't even think I gave you any pushback on it because I was losing my faith in the gimmick as well. When you hear, Bert and you respect Bert, when you hear Dutch and you hear other guys saying, I don't think you should do that gimmick. I don't see you in that gimmick. And you start to think, well, maybe, my mentor was doing it as the same thing that you said, like in CWA and in Columbia, like in Millersville without TV. That gimmick can work off of TV. But if you're going to go some things. So to kind of keep my story going here just a second, you tell me that and I'm like, okay, I'm fine with it. And I'm feeling good because you were not somebody that was like, we're taking it off of you and then we're going to, throw you in the pits. It wasn't like that. And then I'm leaving and I shook TJ's hand coming in and shook it leaving all the time. Always talk to him for a second. And TJ kind of came to me and he was like, you okay with that? He was like, you okay taking the gimmick off? And I said, yeah, I'm good. It makes sense what he's saying. I honestly never had a problem with it. Now, again, other people were in my ear saying, I don't think you should do that. But it was what it was, and I was happy about it. Now, I come back, and you put me with Plunky and Drew. And Drew and Plunky at that time, as the Untouchables, were firing on all cylinders, okay? And I come in there, and I'm trying to be what they need me to be, and I sucked at it because I'd been hiding behind this Middle Eastern prince gimmick, and it was finally that veil was taken off, for a lack of a better term, and I had to be me, and I did not know who I was. So as I'm leaving and coming in, I'm like, man, I'm not good enough to do this. They're cutting promos, and they cut a promo, Drew cuts a promo, and then it's my turn, and I'm trying to say something good, and it always sucked. And it was like 6 or 7 takes, and finally I would get it done, but it was turning into more of a repetitive thing versus a natural thing that I came to be better at. Then I leave. I drop off. Plunkett ends up getting to work Kojima, all these Drew's doing his thing, the Untouchables break up, and I get booked at USWO. So the way it happens with Zach Harris or Nick or Dyron or somebody gets me booked at the Sawmill USWO, and I'm Jimmy there, and everything's cool, and I'm getting better, and I'm getting more aware of what Jimmy is, and then you meet me there, and this is the way it worked out. Now, my memory was a little off there, but you were coming in there and you were helping out because you obviously USWO is your part of your blood, and you said, hey man, what do you think about coming back to SAW? And it was kind of like I was getting called up to the big leagues at that point. And I was like, yes, I do want that. And, it was kind of at the same time that the USWO just wasn't going to last there. You know what I mean? And so SAW, and you were like, we're getting TV, NWA SAW, this kind of thing. Everything goes. And then, boom, I come back. And at that point, you came to me and you were like, I want to do this gimmick, JNS Sports Agency. You're going to be a sports agent. You're not going to be like the classic manager. You're going to be something fresh and new and modern. And I felt like at that point, I got to find myself again in the USWO. I got to find my abilities again. And as soon as I came in there, I was much more ready to be in the locker room of all those legends, man, all those dudes that knew what they were doing on a nightly basis. And at that point, I felt like then, but then at that point, my life and my personal life had gotten the best of me. And so that's kind of what led me to ultimately leaving and moving back to Virginia, because honestly, me moving back to Virginia saved my life. And it was not easy, Jared, right? It was not easy when I first came back, but I eventually came out of it, and I'm in a much better place now. And I wish there was an NWA SAW now, because I could, we'll get into that. But at the same time, I'm in a better place. I have a happy life. But long story short, I thank you. I want to thank you for seeing something in me, and I thank you for giving me that opportunity, because it felt so good to me to be able to not only, kind of come out of that. But even though I was in a really dark place in my life at that time, it really meant the world to me. And that was something I looked forward to instead of trying to do what I was doing in my personal life.
Like you just like the confidence in yourself. I mean, nothing changed between you and that time. I mean, you were a good manager as Omar, so you take the thing off. You just, had to find your mojo there for a minute.
Exactly. And that's kind of, and it's not like I had you on here to clear that up. I had you on here because
and why TJ probably asked you if you were okay with that?
Why is
about
that?
doing is because we always wanted the guys to want to be there. That way we're getting the best out of them.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because if you ain't feeling it, you're out there just going through the motions and,
Yeah, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. But I love my time at the NWA SAW, and it meant so much to me. And I guess, that kind of leads me into the current, and I kind of took over your conversation here, but, the NWA SAW ended, and then it became AWA New South Championship Wrestling, and you were running that. Talk about the end of NWA and into that a little bit, Krull.
Well, the NWA SAW ended when Billy Corgan pretty much, bought the NWA because all that shit was kayfabe from everybody until Cauliflower Alley. But the reason we wound up in Franklin is because when we shut down Millersville about a year after TJ died, Chris Garrett, who was like one of TJ's little flunkies, he was into it with TJ's old lady, Angie, at the time, and he was constantly calling codes on us. So the last 4 or 5 months we were in Millersville, after TJ had died, the fire marshal was making us keep the back door open 80 inches, and there's no way to heat or to cool the building in winter or summer.
Yeah.
And then the landlord wouldn't fix the roof, and it was, how bad that locker room would flood when it rained.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm going to cuss, the damn tire shop that was beside us, those stupid motherfuckers cut the water off the whole strip mall. They had the main on the water, so I'm opening up on Friday, and one week I ain't gotten water because they're mad at the landlord because he would split the water bill down with how many tenants was in the building in that little strip mall, and it was just knucklehead shit after knucklehead shit, and just, after being there from September 2012 to after TJ died and running there, if it wasn't for Mark Houchin and Hammerjack, I wouldn't have made it 11 and a half months after TJ died because I took all that shit on by myself, financially responsible and stuff. And if it wasn't for Mark Houchin and Hammerjack and the boys working for Peanuts, we wouldn't have had that extra year there.
Yeah. And,
one of my goals that I'm proud of is I got TJ to an 8th year anniversary.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so he was actually, his run there in that building was actually 8 years and 2 months. So we shut down in April of 2015.
Yeah.
So a few months after that, Farron started running shows in Kentucky, and he wound up doing that New South, which originally goes back to what SAW originally was.
Right.
So, it just kind of came full circle, and, Farron asked me to help him, and I still had the TV, and so we just kind of meshed together, and, I was still an NWA promoter, so that's how it became NWA New South. And then a year or so after that, he sold it to James Carver, who did the Mr. USA gimmick at the time, who's one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And think the world of. For some reason, for about the first 2 years he ran it, I stayed up there and booked it, and we had a pretty good little run there. Got the building looking good for TV, and then, so that's pretty much how that came about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it was kind of like I'm getting my head right, but I'm also got that fear of missing out. So I'm watching it from afar and kind of like, man, I wish I was there. Looks so good. But the loss of TJ, that was such a major loss for everyone. And, that man put a lot of faith in me before a lot of people did. Porter booked me because someone else, Aaron, told him to book me. He wanted to bring me in and do this gimmick and all that stuff. Not knocking Porter, but I didn't have any kind of like deep kinship with him. In certain ways it's thankful, but in other ways I could have learned some stuff from him. But when it comes down to it, TJ, I had such a deep thought and caring for. The loss of him, I think it was felt by so many people there. And I know I'm just one person that felt it, but I know there was the whole building that night, the tribute to him, and the boys won the titles and, all that. It was just such a special night. And I really got to give you kudos for how you did that, because not only were you taking on the weight of the world at that point, you know what I mean? And you were, I'm sure, and nobody knew that because you never let it show, you know what I'm saying? But the other thing is, you're replacing somebody who had been there and had been such a major presence. It had to have been tough, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd give anything just to go and eat and sit down and just talk to TJ, because after that show with Plunkett and Kojima, me and Cersei had to fly to Vegas that Saturday morning. So it's like Saturday morning, we get up, I go to TJ's to settle up with him, because me and Cersei paid for Kojima, but we did a meet and greet. So I had, ticket money to give him. And plus he didn't want to pay me in front of everybody.
Yeah.
Because I had so much fun that night, because like TJ was hanging out, because that's why TJ ran wrestling. It was like his family's weekend cookout or going to the movies, it was their little time to socialize. It's just as much, and he loved, and one thing I loved about Millersville is seeing TJ look out that concession window watching his kids wrestle.
Yeah. It was beautiful, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it was. But, so anyway, like after the show, I wore out, because man, I'd be working 10-hour days and getting off at 2 and flying to Millersville. And so my Fridays were like an 18-hour deal sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting up there. It's like after the show, and TJ's like, he's not wanting to smart, because and that's another thing. TJ, I don't know what he made, but he had to make some good money that night.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like he's like trying to talk to me in front of everybody. He's like, "Can you come by the house in the morning?" And we settled up on it. I said, "Yeah." So next morning, about 10 o'clock, I go to his house, and him, Kevin, and one other person, I don't remember who it was. But so we settled up on our money, and I went to Vegas, and that was the last time I actually talked to TJ.
Man.
Was in his house that Saturday after that. So Nick Nikers texted me that Tuesday, and we're flying back Wednesday to coming back from Vegas. And, he texted me, said TJ's in the hospital.
Yeah.
So, so we get back from, hell, I don't know if you were around when he was in the hospital. 2 weeks he's in the hospital, but man, there was a ton of us always out there around the clock.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I came and saw him a couple times. Yeah.
Well, it was always 10, 12, 20 people out there.
Oh, yeah. You were there when I came in there one time. I remember that.
But there was many nights Cersei stayed out there around the clock with some of them.
Yeah.
But not just the wrestling, man. TJ, one thing that really touched me about TJ is Chicken Hat Charles lived up the street that I lived on.
Right.
And his mother died, and his mother's the one that took care of him.
Yeah.
TJ called me crying, wanting to make sure somebody was going to take care of him. He was going to let him move in with him.
Wow.
That's the kind of person TJ was.
And that if you don't know who Chicken Hat is, he's probably what is that guy that's the WWE fan that was always at every show? He's like, he has a Russian name. I can't remember. Yeah. Somebody put it in.
He's like an ECW, the hat guy that you always saw in front row.
Chicken Hat was and he could be at anywhere from the, the fairgrounds with TNA, WWE at the auditorium, at the municipal, or he would be at the local shows. And, I've got so many funny things about Chicken Hat, but one of the things I remember is you would give me the microphone and I would walk out and I said, if everybody could just shut up for a second and I can get past y'all's stench, I'm going to say some things. Oh God, shut up, Chicken Hat, his voice, he would dance like nobody was watching, you know what I mean? And, Chicken Hat is a legendary fan. I was going to ask you actually, how have you heard about him? How is he doing? Or
The last time I've heard about him is that his brother's taking care of him, and he lives somewhere in Florida and works at a Margaritaville.
Oh, okay. Well, good.
I'll tell you a real quick story with TJ and Chicken Hat. It was just a regular night at Millersville, and it was like the middle of the card, and TJ, he'd sit out, and he was still sitting at the lobby doing his envelopes, and he called, I was coming through for something. TJ said, "Come here, sit down." He said, "You got time to sit down?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Watch this. Like when the bell rung for the match to start, Charles would run to the bathroom and make sure the light's out and the door shut, and then run back to the seat before the matches started."
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why, if it was OCD or something or what, but TJ said, watch what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he did that. TJ's like, he does that for almost every match.
Wow, man. Yeah, God bless Chicken Hat. God bless TJ Weatherby, man. Rest in peace, TJ. We miss you. So, we got to get you back on sometime soon. I tell you, as we're kind of wrapping up, though, I want to make sure that we get the promotion out. So there is an upcoming USWO and SAW co-promoted show on June 16th at 8 p.m. Tell us a little bit about that.
Basically, we're going to do a SAW show with the USWO reunion theme.
Yeah.
And every third Friday of the month following that, we're going to be doing a USWO SAW show there every month.
That's awesome.
At least that's the plan.
Yeah.
As long as the people come out and support it and it's financially feasible, we will continue to do.
And where's that going to be?
At the Nashville Troubadours across the street from Opryland Hotel. Couldn't ask for a better location. You couldn't ask for a better venue.
Yeah. Now, I saw some pictures from the previous SAW show. Yeah. It was gorgeous in there, man. Looks amazing, We had probably close to 400 people in there that night. Yeah. Well, I hope y'all do well. Krull, first of all, I can't thank you enough. We can't thank you enough for coming on the show. It's meant the world that we could make this happen. But also, I got to thank you immensely for what you not only saw in me, but also giving me the opportunity to do it. And you put me in a main event storyline. It was amazing, and I'm so appreciative of that, and I'm appreciative of our kinship here, and you coming on, man. I can't thank you enough for that.
No problem, man.
Well, Jared, Jared, do you have anything else you'd like to ask?
I guess I'd like to ask just a follow-up question, the one I asked earlier. So at that point, you had a favorite match. Now, what's your favorite match from your entire career that you've had?
From my entire career. Damn, that is a good question. No, be honest, I don't know. Probably would be with Big John White. Our matches were basically about the same. We'd go in there and run our same without even really calling stuff.
Yeah.
So probably when I was in my early mid to 20s working Big John White.
Yeah. Where can they find you on YouTube, brother?
My YouTube channels, I've lost access to it, but I got 14 or more years of content on it at youtube.com/Krizzle, KRIZULL.
Yeah, you might see a little Jimmy Street on there.
Search for Nashville Wrestling Network. I got 2 channels.
Okay.
Under that.
Yeah, there's some great stuff on there. Highly recommended. Of course, we always represent our buddy Brian Turner. I see some stuff on there too. He's always funny. He's always like, man, some of these guys are killing me with this, putting stuff on there. I know it's a fight because we have our own YouTube channel. Of course, that's GMBMPW with our own stuff. But, I know YouTube's a battle to get subscribers and not only to get views and stuff and the algorithm and all that stuff, but everything you do is always something that I appreciate and support, Krull. So once again, we deeply thank you for coming on, brother. And like I said, somewhere down the line, we'll get you back on here and talk some more about
because we need to tell the story of how the NWA didn't want Jeremiah Plunkett working the New Japan Legends.
Well,
that's an episode in itself, and Plunkett don't even know all the ins and outs on that.
Well, I tell you what, we'll get you back and we'll tell that. Maybe we'll bring Plunkett on with that. That's a good idea. I love it. Well, for the Plastic Sheik, Jared Street, I am Jimmy Street, and for our great guest, Krull the Death Stalker, Mr. Tim Thomason, we're Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling. We'll be right back to wrap things up after these messages.
This is The Big Picture, Michael Jablonski. Don't forget to tune in every week to Jablonski's Pissed Off on the Mike Jablonski's Pissed Off YouTube channel.
The Foxtrot in the sport, he's gonna tell you all about it. He doesn't care what you think, you're gonna hear all about it. Mike Jablonski, it's so pissed off. Mike Jablonski, it's so pissed off. Mike Jablonski, it's so pissed off. He's pissed off.
If you're a pro wrestling fan, there's something for everyone at the Cheap Heat TV Podcast Network. From the Pro Wrestling Discussion Show, Cheap Heat TV Live, to the interview show, the Jackson Interaction Podcast with the king of all wrestling media, Gene Jackson, to the silliness of the Whitey Jenkins Show, and the brand new Zip, Xander's Irresistible Podcast with Charles Anders. You can check them all out and much more over at cheapheattvlive.com.
Oh man, what a great episode with Krull. Was that not awesome?
Man, it's so awesome. And to hear from him, he's been in the business forever, and to hear that, maybe Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson, kind of looking his way, and then kind of you see Mankind later. It's kind of an interesting story, man. It's,
very interesting. Very,
because you look at his character and you're like, I can see that. I mean, it's kind of like I don't know. You kind of look at him and you see Van Vader, Mankind, stuff like that. I mean, not many people were wearing masks back when he was. So
no, not at all. And you know what? A lot of guys say stuff, and some people may say stuff that maybe be like, I don't even know if I can believe that. It's so hard to believe. But the facts are there. He was in that gimmick. We've got pictures. In fact, if you've seen promotional pictures, you've seen the gear that he wore to make him look like Krull. And the timing on that, you can go online and find the timing that he was actually on that show with the Yokozuna and Lex Luger that Vince and Pat were at. So the timing is all there. It's not hard to believe too, so the idea to me is I wonder why they just didn't take him, but we'll never know that one.
You'll never know the answer to that. I mean, it's all, they like who they like, and sometimes they're a great judge of talent. Sometimes they're a poor judge of talent to me. So, I mean,
Right. But what I loved that Krull was telling the stories, all those stories, especially I've never heard that full story about Bill DeShields and Tony Falk and basically Bill DeShields strong arming Tony Falk at the Stadium Inn. And I tell you what, that's crazy stuff. And, he did give me a little line there at the end where he was like, hey, we need to tell the story about Plunky and the Kojima. So what I'm thinking is coming up soon, maybe we have a special episode with Plunky and him on it, telling that story, because I tell you, he's right. You and I can just sit back and let them talk, because honestly, that show's going to be good, because it was crazy. And the NWA didn't, I remember that time, it was a battle, and they doubled down and made it happen to where Plunky was the man for that. And, if you think a legendary man like Satoshi Kojima coming from New Japan, and it's just so cool, man. I don't want to ruin the story, but it's so cool. It's almost like a Dark Side of the Ring in a sense, So we'll definitely figure that one out soon, y'all. We've got a long list ahead of us, like I said earlier in the show. But I think right now, more than anyone, who I'd like to bring to this show is the Plastic Sheik. You got anything for us, Sheik?
Yes, I do, indeed.
Well, kids, tell them what's up.
Action figure.
So, update from the Powertown end of things. They're supposed to be starting shipping anytime, or you may have already received your shipping if you've ordered from them.
Yeah.
I haven't received an email or my tracking info yet, but I've got one that says coming soon, basically, the shipping. So
sure,
we'll see. Fingers crossed. But they also announced their Powertown Remco line.
From Remco.
That's coming out. So series 1 of that, some pretty exciting stuff out of it. The Rock and Roll Express.
Boom.
And if you know that we love that.
Absolutely.
We got to get one of the 2-packs, and you get Ricky and I get Robert, right?
That's how it's got to be, right?
And then Bobo Brazil.
It's very cool. I think that'll be an awesome figure. You know, like I remember the Carlos Colon and Abdullah the Butcher. Yeah. I mean, you got to have some representation from all sides there. So that'll be awesome.
And then I'm wondering exactly what this is going to look like fully, but it specifically references the Tully and Magnum TA I Quit match. So I don't know if they're going to be like
just a
bloody, kind of a bloody thing too, or thing like I don't know.
Maybe some replacement heads, maybe 2 heads or something.
Nick Bockwinkel, so that's going to be a guy who actually had an original Remco.
Yeah.
And then he's going to have one of these as well.
Yeah.
One of your favorites, Tito Santana.
It'll probably cost $300 just to
That's what I was wondering,
for
$300, you think so? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to be underrated because it's very toyetic, so to say. The Missing Link.
Yeah, dude. Is that one not perfect, man?
That one's perfect. I've seen custom Hasbros of this before, and I think you told me you'd seen a custom Remco of him before. So
yeah, are you a member of the Facebook group, the Remco?
I am, yeah. I think so, yeah.
So there's a guy on there, I don't know his name, I don't want to even get into that, but there's a guy on there that does really good customs. There's some other people that don't do very good customs, but this guy actually does really good work, and he actually made a Missing Link using Hawk's head and John Nord's body. It was pretty cool. And I mean, if you think about it, he used a Nord, which is like...
that stabs me in the heart that he used a Nord for it.
Maybe he just used the pieces or something.
Maybe he had maybe there were some pieces that he had. I don't know, man. Well,
yeah.
That's a hard one to
chop up. Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, if you think about a Hawk head painted up a little bit, it looks perfect. And anyway, so let me just give my input on this. Now, these are some thoughts that I have. One, the Magnum and the Tully. That's awesome. Think it's great. But you know, there were 2 body styles back in the Remco days. Do you put the Magnum as like the classic muscular style He-Man look? And then do you put Tully as the, like Freebird style, kind of what Terry Gordy had? I know that was supposed to mark in them as a larger man, but almost looks more like a normal body style of somebody, say, like the Rock and Roll Express, somebody like a Tully Blanchard. But also, they'll probably put him on the muscular body. My other input on that is I almost would have preferred it be Magnum and Nikita in the, the best of 7. And honestly, I feel like Nikita is a little more, what did they call it, toyetic than Tully. But again, I'm not questioning anything. Nick Bockwinkel, that's a no-brainer. Bobo Brazil, no-brainer. Love that idea. Missing Link, no-brainer.
Perfect, yeah.
My other thing
Missing Link is the perfect. I mean,
this is I think Missing Link might be the star of the show. It's kind of like the Brody in the first series, But let me throw one more thing at you. The Rock and Roll Express, to put them on the He-Man style muscular bodies almost bugs me a little. Do you think they'll have a new body style? Do you think they'll be on the muscular style, or do you think they may put them on the more Terry Gordy, Abdullah the Butcher body style?
I think pretty much all these people will probably be, unless they do have a new body type, I think they'll do all of them on the muscular style.
So all He-Man body style.
I think they'll all look like He-Man, unless they do like a different. But see, even Tito Santana's not like jack muscular.
Sure.
I mean, right. Like, as far as jack muscular, you look at here, Bobo Brazil
had a good body, but never jacked.
But I mean, more jacked than probably most of them. I mean,
sure.
The Missing Link did have the great body. I mean, he was jacked probably, but he didn't have. But a lot of these guys are kind of just regular looking guys. I mean,
Link always reminded me of like a large Terry Funk, like very similar body style, very similar kind of look, but he was just bigger than Funk, But I don't know, man. I mean, I'm happy about it. Also, and what did I text you immediately? Kind of was like,
is that the only rock and roll we're going to get?
That's the thing. If that's the case, then keep them. I want to see those.
But see, I think I think they'll be good sellers. So I think you'll get as long as Powertown does good, I think you will get another. Another thing out of them.
Also, what's the price point on these going to be?
Yeah, no idea. I would say they'll be $30 at least. I mean, and a 2-pack's probably 40 at least. I don't know.
Okay, and is that worth it? I mean, I know it's worth it to you, but you know,
to me it is. There's so many collectors out there. I can't.
Yeah,
if they do right, but I mean, I think people will be picking and choosing. Some of these names don't knock you out if you're not a collector, I don't think.
Sure. I mean, again, the Tito Santana, I've got a little bad taste in my mouth because of him. But again, it's nothing against his career or the man himself. I just, it's a little podcasting issue that I've had with him. But, I love the idea of the Bobo. Missing Link, of course. Nick Bockwinkel makes total sense. All of them make great sense. I might have just with a rather had the Nikita in that lineup and also just, where's it?
Did Tully in that match, was he in blue jeans and cowboy boots and like a cutoff shirt? Or am I thinking of a different match that he had?
That's the bunkhouse stand.
That's the bunkhouse, isn't it? Yeah, that's the bunkhouse match.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering if they were going to have him like kind of in that gear and maybe would look cooler in that gear than.
Maybe, but. And
I'm excited to have a Tully like this too, though. I mean, like, just if they had Jim Crockett promotions of these characters of this Ribco back in the day, how big we would have been all over. I mean, we were big all over it anyway.
Dude, it would have been over with. And, we even asked Steve that question, was that ever a chance? And apparently it wasn't. But, the other thing I really want to ask is just seeing images of the MWF podcast figures that they've made in the Remco style. Those are, I think, a little cheaper made, and they actually look more like the bodies of the knockoff Iron Sheik.
They do. I agree with you.
And knockoff Hulk Hogan.
Jimmy Snuka.
Yes, knockoff Snukas and stuff. Do they come across this way, or do they even just, if they could even just get the molds of the old Remco, that would make me happy, Oh,
I would love that. And surely if anybody maybe have a connection to it, it'd be Steve.
Yeah. Yeah. And when will we see these? It's been 9 months, right? I think you said 9 months to the
9
day.
months since I ordered mine. Yeah.
Yeah. So is there, that's the other thing we talked about. That's the, I understand, you understand promoting a product for people that is out of nowhere. We're trying to put across a podcast here that we don't have a name, so it's you and me, and we're just doing this and trying to get as many people to listen as much as possible. But, long story short, I worry that, because I've heard so many people talk about how impatient they've been with the Powertown line.
Well, just go on Facebook, on their Facebook group, and you can see how people are commenting on every one of their posts like, well, it'd be nice to have my figures.
Yeah, exactly. Can I cancel my figures, since they haven't come? I mean, what's a normal pre-order for Mattel? What's their turnaround time on that?
Man, I tell you, some of the newer, like the Mattel creations, like the Hasbro style, sometimes I'll pre-order it, they'll open the pre-order and I'll get it shipped the next week. But that's a huge, they've already got them produced at that point. So they're doing, but I've seen some 4 to 6 months. I mean, is not out of the question if they're doing like a big pre-order thing on it.
But that's with Mattel, and Mattel can kind of eat those if they don't, ringside collect.
Or they can put them on their site and sell them.
Right. So really anticipating a pre-order with Powertown and must be different because, and that's the other thing. It's like
they redid the Series 1 too. They redid because they were having issues with them like popping apart and stuff like that. So I'm at least glad that they redid them if they were having that trouble though. So
oh, for sure. No, no question. And I think they're doing right by everybody. But anyway, I hope the best for them. Greg got on our podcast and kind of spilled a bunch of secrets, and we really haven't been as much in communication with them since. But it may.
And we don't know if that's the reason or if that's just But we're just a little podcast that really can't help them. So
right, exactly, and that's probably what it is. But maybe I'm just looking into it too much. But long story short, we definitely appreciate Steve coming on. Appreciate Greg and Magnum being on our show and giving us that opportunity. So that was awesome. But I hope big things for them. I really do.
I do too.
I mean,
yeah, I want them to do great because I want more to collect. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, Sheik, do you have anything more about this new Powertown announcement?
That's it right now, man. That's it right now.
All right.
Figure sold separately.
All right. Well, thank y'all again for sticking around with us. Once again, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at GMBMPW. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow us so you can see all the new announcements we've got for upcoming episodes and also links to the shows that we already have. Definitely want to thank y'all. Thank you, Sheik, for doing this with me. This is a great, fun interview we had with Krull today. Man, Krull would have been a great action figure, right? Come on.
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Maybe get him up with Insane Shane.
Yeah, or maybe Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling will get big enough that we have our own Plastic Sheik figure line.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. All right. Well, we thank y'all one more time for listening to Krull. Next episode, we're going to have Quentin Charisma, old QQ as they call him. One of those guys, like I said, that knows everybody and has done everything. And we, again, just appreciate y'all so much and for all the great, responses we've received. People text me saying, hey, man, I just listened to Hot Rod. Now I'm listening to the whole series. I'm listening to the whole run. And so, y'all, that just means so much to us. So thank you again for listening to just this episode. But if you listen, go check out the others. I think you'll find something you like in all of them. So we thank y'all and catch us next time on Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Don't forget,
I don't want to fight Krull.
Maybe.
With a tear in my eye. This is the greatest moment in my life.
We'll see you later.
This has been a James Rock Street production.